My cousins
Come
used to
on,
call me
man.
a
Lighten up a little.
paper-pushing
Yeah,
loser at
just
every
relax.
family
Shut up.
barbecue,
Hey, look at him. He's taking
laughing
it
at
like a
my
champ. Yeah, calm as a
boring
cucumber,
government
man.
job
You're
and
killing
my
me. It's all good. I'm
discount
used to
rack
it.
clothes. But the laughter
Is that what I
died the
think it is?
second a
They're
massive
fun!
blue and white jet screamed across the sky and landed on our small town runway. When the door opened and a general snapped a salute to me in front of the whole town, my cousins finally realized that the boring guy they'd been mocking for 10 years was actually the only person on Earth the president was waiting for. The sun was beating down on the brick patio in the suburbs of Ohio. It was the kind of heat that made the air feel thick, like you were breathing through a wet towel. Bill was at the grill, flipping burgers and making sure everyone heard his voice. Bill liked to be the loudest person in the room. He wore an expensive watch and kept talking about his new car dealership. "Pass me a soda, Mike," Bill shouted, not looking up. "Try not to drop it. I know you're used to just holding pens all day." His brother, Gary, burst out laughing. Gary worked in real estate and spent most of his time posting photos of himself in suits on the internet. "Hey, leave Mike alone. It takes a lot of hard work to be a junior logistics coordinator for the government. That sounds like a very important way to say you organize filing cabinets." I just smiled and handed Bill the drink. I didn't say much. I never did. To them, I was just Mike. I lived in a small apartment, drove a 5-year-old sedan, and wore plain polo shirts from the mall. While they were busy talking about their commissions and their hustle, I told them I worked in a bland government building doing paperwork. "Seriously though, Mike," Gary said, leaning against a lawn chair, "don't you get bored? I saw a picture of your office building on the news once. It looked like a giant concrete box with no windows. I'd lose my mind in a place like that. I need to be out in the world making moves." "It's steady," I said. It was the same answer I gave every year. "The benefits are good." "The benefits," Bill yelled, flipping a burger so hard grease popped onto his apron. "That's what people say when they've given up. Oh, the dental plan is great. Meanwhile, I'm out here building an empire. You're just a gear in a machine that doesn't even know you exist." Our other cousin, Kevin, joined in. Kevin was younger and always tried to act tougher than he was. "I bet you have to wear a little ID badge with a blurry photo, don't you? Do you have your own cubicle, or do you share it with another boring guy named Bob?" They all roared with laughter. My aunt and uncle were sitting nearby, shaking their heads but smiling. They loved Mike, but they agreed with the rest of the family. I was the safe one. I was the one who went to school, got a quiet job, and disappeared into the background. I was the one they didn't have to worry about, but also the one they didn't respect. "I have my own space," I said quietly. "Hear that? He's got a cubicle, big time," Bill teased. He pointed a spatula at me. "Listen, Mike, if you ever want a real job, something where you actually see the sun and make some real cash, come talk to me. I can't have my cousin wasting away in some dusty basement for the rest of his life. It's embarrassing when people ask what you do." "What do you tell them?" I asked. "I tell them you're in administration," Bill said, rolling his eyes. "It's a polite way of saying you're a paper pusher. It's okay. Not everyone is meant for the top. Someone has to keep the lights on for the rest of us." The afternoon went on like that. For 3 hours, I was the punchline. They joked about my government sneakers, my plain haircut, and the fact that I didn't have a flashy social media page. I took it all. I ate my burger, drank my soda, and watched the clock. Around 4 p.m., my phone buzzed in my pocket. It wasn't a normal ringtone. It was a short, sharp vibration. 3 times, then a pause, then 3 more. My posture changed instantly. I didn't mean for it to, but my shoulders went back and my chin went up. "Gotta go?" Gary asked, mocking me. "Is there a paperclip emergency at the office? Did the printer run out of ink?" "Actually," I said, standing up, "I have to head over to the regional airfield. There's a transport coming in that I need to oversee." Bill stopped laughing and looked at me. "The little airport by the cornfields? For what? They moving more filing cabinets?" "Something like that," I said. "Well, we're coming with you, Bill," Bill said, wiping his towel on a towel. I want to see this. I want to see Mike in his natural habitat. Maybe we can see his little badge in action. You don't want to do that, Bill, I warned him. Oh, yes, we do, Kevin jumped in. We've been sitting in this backyard all day. Let's go see what logistics actually looks like. I bet it's a guy in a Cessna delivering mail. I looked at them. They were all grinning, ready to keep the joke going. They thought this was going to be the funniest part of the day, watching me walk into a small, empty airport to sign a clipboard for a delivery of office supplies. Fine, I said. Follow me, but stay in your cars until I tell you it's okay to get out. Ooh, so mysterious, Gary joked, grabbing his car keys. Watch out, world. Agent Mike is on the move. We drove in a line. My plain sedan was in the front, followed by Bill's shiny SUV and Gary's sports car. We drove past the houses, past the grocery stores, and out towards the edge of town where the trees got thicker and the roads got quieter. As we pulled up to the gate of the airfield, the mood started to shift. There wasn't just a chain-link fence and a sleepy guard. There were black SUVs parked every 50 feet. There were men in dark suits standing perfectly still despite the heat. Bill pulled up beside me, his window down. Hey, Mike, why is there so much security? Is there a football team coming through or something? I didn't answer him. I just drove up to the gate. I didn't show a badge. I didn't say a word. I just looked into a camera, and the heavy steel gate slid open without a sound. Hey, Bill shouted. How did you do that? I kept driving towards the wide-open tarmac. The sun was starting to dip lower in the sky, turning everything orange. In the distance, we could hear a low rumble. It wasn't the sound of a small mail plane. It was a deep, chest-shaking roar that made the ground vibrate under the tires of our cars. I parked my car near the edge of the runway and stepped out. My cousins parked behind me. They got out of their cars, but they weren't laughing anymore. They were looking at the sky. A massive shape was appearing through the clouds. It was blue, white, and silver. It was the most famous plane in the world. No way, Kevin whispered, his voice cracking. That's not possible. The plane descended, its landing gear locking into place with a heavy thud. It hit the runway, and the sound was deafening. As it slowed down and turned towards us, the words United States of America were visible across the side in bold, clear letters. The engines began to whine as they powered down. A set of stairs rolled out towards the door. The men in suits moved into a circle around the landing area. My cousins were frozen, standing by their expensive cars, looking like small children. Then a man in a crisp uniform walked towards us. He didn't look at Bill, he didn't look at Gary. He walked straight to me and snapped a sharp salute. Sir, the officer said, his voice echoing in the sudden quiet. The package is secure. We are ready for your signal. My cousins stared at me, their mouths wide open. Tell them we're ready. My voice was different now. It wasn't the quiet voice from the barbecue. It was a voice that expected to be obeyed. The officer nodded and spoke into a radio on his shoulder. Clear the path, bring him out. Wait for my signal to continue.
The roar of the engines died down to a low, electric hum that seemed to vibrate in my cousin's teeth. Bill was gripping the door of his SUV so hard his knuckles were white. Gary, who usually had a comment for everything, looked like he had forgotten how to speak. Kevin just kept blinking, his eyes darting from the massive plane to the soldiers, then back to my plain mall-bought polo shirt. Mike? Bill's voice was tiny. It was the smallest I had ever heard him. What is that? Why is that plane here? This is a crop duster strip. It was the closest secure location, I said, checking my watch. I didn't look at him. I was watching the main cabin door. A group of men in dark suits and sunglasses stepped out first. They moved with a synchronized rhythm, fanning out across the tarmac. They didn't look like the security guards you see at a mall or a nightclub. They looked like statues made of granite. One of them tapped his earpiece, scanned the tree line, and then fixed his eyes on our group. Sir, your guests, the lead agent said, stepping toward me. He didn't look at Bill or Gary as people. He looked at them as obstacles. They aren't on the cleared manifest. They're with me, Dave, I said. They're family. They were just curious about my office job. The agent, Dave, didn't smile. He didn't even blink. He just gave a short nod and stepped back into his perimeter. Mike, talk to me, Gary stammered, finally finding his breath. You said you did logistics. You said you handled paperwork in a concrete box. You're a clerk, Mike. You're just a regular guy. I do handle logistics, Gary, I said, still watching the plane. I coordinate the movement of high-value assets in high-risk environments. It just so happens that the assets I move are usually people. Very important people. The stairs were fully extended now. A man in a sharp suit with a small American flag pin on his lapel walked down the steps. He was carrying a briefcase handcuffed to his wrist. Behind him, more agents appeared. The air felt heavy with the weight of whatever was happening. Wait, Kevin whispered, pointing at the briefcase. Is that the thing, like in the movies? The codes? It's just a bag, Kevin, I said, though I knew exactly what was in it. Stay back, don't move toward the line. Suddenly, a black Suburban sped across the tarmac from the far side of the airfield. It skidded to a halt 10 feet from us. 4 more men jumped out, rifles held across their chests. They didn't point them at us, but they were ready. My cousins jumped back, nearly tripping over their own feet. Bill actually hid behind his open car door. Is someone coming to kill us? Mike, get in the car. Let's get out of here. Nobody is going to kill you, Bill, I said. Just stay still and keep your hands where they can see them. The man with the briefcase reached the bottom of the stairs. He looked around, spotted me, and started walking over. My cousins looked like they wanted to run, but their legs wouldn't work. The man stopped 3 feet in front of me and stood at attention. Director, the man said. Director. The word hung in the air like a physical weight. Bill's jaw actually dropped. He looked at me as if I had suddenly grown a second head. The situation in the Capitol has shifted. The president is remaining on board for the briefing. He's requested your presence immediately. He said he won't start the meeting until the guy who actually knows where the pieces are is in the room. I nodded. Is the secure line established with the Pentagon? Yes, sir. We're live. They're waiting for your authorization to move the fleet. I turned to look at my cousins. They were huddled together by their cars, looking like 3 lost kids in a giant playground. The sun was hitting the silver wing of Air Force One, reflecting a blinding light that made the whole scene feel like a dream. I have to go, I told them. You're going on the plane? Gary asked. His voice was trembling. With the president? Mike, you're wearing a shirt from the clearance rack. You have a stain on your shoe from Bill's grass. The president doesn't care about my shoes, Gary, I said. He cares that I can tell him exactly how to get 1,000 people out of a city under an hour without anyone noticing. He cares that I've never lost a package in 10 years. But you're Mike, Bill said, his face red. He looked embarrassed, but more than that, he looked terrified. We laughed at you. I told you you were a gear in a machine. I told you you were embarrassing. I know what you said, Bill, I said calmly, but the machine is a lot bigger than you think, and someone has to make sure it doesn't break. Sir, we're on a clock, the man with the briefcase reminded me. I started walking toward the stairs. Each step I took away from my cousins felt like I was stepping back into my real life. The Mike they knew, the boring cousin who brought the cheap potato salad and sat in the corner, was disappearing. Wait, Kevin yelled out. What about the barbecue? What do we tell Aunt May? What do we tell people? I stopped at the foot of the stairs and looked back over my shoulder. The wind from the idling engines was picking up, blowing dust across the runway. Tell them I'm at the office. Tell them I'm just doing some paperwork. I climbed the stairs. At the top, 2 Marines in full-dress uniforms stood on either side of the door. As I reached the platform, they both snapped to attention and saluted. I didn't salute back. I just walked into the cool, dim interior of the most protected aircraft on Earth. The door began to hiss as it sealed shut. Through the thick, bulletproof window, I could see my cousins. They were standing on the tarmac, 3 small figures next to their luxury cars. Bill's car dealership, Gary's real estate deals, Kevin's tough guy act. It all looked so tiny from up here. They were staring at the plane as if it were a spaceship. I felt the floor tilt as the plane began to taxi. I sat down in a leather chair and buckled in. A steward walked over and handed me a secure tablet. "Good to see you again, Director," he said. "The president is in the conference room. He's a little frustrated with the generals. He needs your simple version of the plan." "I'll be right there," I said. I looked out the window one last time. We were picking up speed. The small town of my childhood was blurring into a green and brown smudge. I thought about the backyard, the smell of burnt burgers, and the sound of my cousin's laughter. It felt like it happened a lifetime ago. The wheels left the ground. We were climbing, cutting through the orange clouds toward the dark blue of the upper atmosphere. Down below, Bill, Gary, and Kevin were probably still standing there, wondering who I really was. But the truth was, I was still the same Mike. I just had a very different definition of logistics.
The interior of the plane was silent, a sharp contrast to the screaming engines outside. It smelled like expensive leather and fresh coffee. I walked down the narrow hallway, past tech experts typing on glowing screens and agents who simply nodded as I passed. I reached a heavy door at the center of the craft. 2 more guards stood there. They didn't ask for ID. They simply pulled the handles and let me in. The conference room was filled with men and women in uniforms covered in stars. Maps were projected onto the walls, showing blinking red lights across a continent thousands of miles away. At the head of the table sat the president. He looked tired. He had a phone pressed to his ear and was rubbing his temples. "I don't care what the satellite says," the president barked into the phone. "I want boots on the ground, and I want them moved without starting a war. Find me someone who isn't guessing." He looked up and saw me standing by the door. He hung up the phone immediately. A small smile broke through his stressed expression. "Mike," he said, standing up. The generals in the room all stood up too. "Thank God. These boys are trying to move a mountain with a spoon. Tell them why their plan is going to get my people stuck in traffic." I walked to the table. I didn't feel nervous. In this room, I wasn't the guy who brought the wrong brand of soda to the barbecue. I was the person who kept the world's most complex moving parts from crashing into each other. "The bridge on the northern route is too narrow for the transport trucks, Mr. President," I said, my voice steady. "And the southern pass is seeing a seasonal mudslide. If you move now, you'll be trapped. We need to use the rail lines I secured last month. It's boring, it's slow, but it works 100% of the time." The president looked at the generals. They looked at the floor. "See?" the president said. "Logistics. It's not about the flash, it's about the finish. Mike, stay with me. We've got a long flight to D.C." The meeting lasted 4 hours. By the time we leveled out at 30,000 feet, the plan was set. The president thanked me and headed to his private cabin to rest. I stayed in the lounge, looking out the window at the stars. I thought about my cousins. I wondered if they were still standing on that landing strip, or if they had finally driven home in silence. About an hour before landing, my personal phone buzzed. It was a text from Bill. "Mike, we're still at the airport. The police came and told us to move, but then a guy in a suit told them to leave us alone. Is that really you on that plane? Gary is shaking. Kevin won't stop talking about the guns. We're sorry, man. We didn't know." I looked at the screen for a long time. I started to type a long message about how I had spent 15 years building this career, how I had been in war zones and basement bunkers while they were selling cars and houses. I wanted to tell them that boring is what keeps the world safe. But then I remembered my own rules. Simple was better. "It's just a job, Bill," I wrote back. "See you at Christmas." When the plane finally touched down at Andrews Air Force Base, the sun was starting to come up. The humidity of the Ohio afternoon was replaced by the crisp, busy air of the capital. I stepped off the plane and a black car was already waiting for me at the bottom of the ramp. As I got into the back seat, the driver, a man I'd known for years named Joe, looked at me in the rearview mirror. "Rough day at the office, Mike?" Joe asked. "The usual," I said, leaning my head back against the seat. "My family thinks I'm a loser, and the president thinks I'm a hero. I think I just want a nap." Joe laughed and pulled the car away from the runway.
Well, look on the bright side. At least you don't have to flip burgers for a living. I smiled. I thought about Bill's grill and the way he looked when he told me I was a gear in a machine. He was right, in a way. I was a gear, but without that gear, the whole machine stops turning. I reached into my pocket and pulled out my plain plastic government ID. The photo was a little blurry, just like Kevin had joked. I looked like a regular guy. I looked like someone you'd pass in the grocery store and never remember. That was my greatest strength. I put the ID away and watched the monuments of Washington, D.C. slide past the window. The city was waking up. Thousands of people were heading to their boring jobs, carrying their coffee and planning their weekends. Most of them would never be famous. Most of them would never have their names called by a soldier on a runway. But they were the ones who kept the world moving. And as I closed my eyes for a few minutes of sleep before my next meeting, I realized I didn't need my cousins to understand my life. I didn't need the flashy car or the loud voice. I knew who I was, and so did the man in the blue and white plane. The car pulled up to the concrete box of a building where I worked. I stepped out, straightened my mall-bought polo shirt, and walked through the front doors. I scanned my badge, the gate clicked open, and I went back to work.